up this morning, I got out of bed, I grabbed my ukulele, I played some blues instead. Ukulele blues. The island storm is bothering me, gotta change my shoe. Ukulele blues. Ukulele blues. Howdy. So that was my song Ukulele Blues, just having a muck around in open D tuning and using the slide. And D and G tuning are probably the most traditional tunings you'll find for slide. But on the ukulele, if you drop this first string down to a G, then you'll get an open C chord. So that would be adequate as well if you want to play any of these riffs, which I would just demonstrate a couple of ideas really to get you started. So if I'm playing in open D, this note here is an F sharp, A, D and an A. So F sharp, A, D and A, and that gives me a D chord as opposed to a C chord, which if you tune this first string down to a G, then you're going to get a C chord. And that just means I don't have to finger any shapes. It means that all the open notes create a chord, and as you can see, you can't create shapes with the slide. Now to get the slide effect, what we do is we're going to actually rest the slide very lightly, and you want to keep it parallel to the fret. So you can see there that I'm quite straight with the fret. Keep it there, and you can actually play very lightly, pushing down. I'm not actually pushing down that hard at all. I'm just more like resting on the strings. Tiny little bit of pressure, but very small amount. Now that's a lot more stable when I put it on the ring finger and I support the little finger and the other fingers either side. It means I can keep it a lot straighter, a lot more even on the notes, and I get a slightly better sound, a lot bit more control. So what you want to do is stick it on that ring finger, fingers the other side, and aim for something like the 3rd fret, and play the middle 2 notes, and just try and slide them up and get that whoop sound. And then when you get up the top, play anywhere up the top, doesn't really matter, and try and keep it so it's even, so the slide is even all the way down. None of this like moving at an angle. You'll want to do that because naturally when you play, you normally have all your fingers at an angle when you do chords, but you've got to keep it super straight and level with the frets. So look down at it, and as you play it, make sure it's in parallel to the frets. Just try and get it flat. Now, different types of slides. You've got glass, steel. This is a brass slide. I quite like the weight and the feel of the brass slide. I use it a lot on acoustic guitar. The glass slide might give you a cleaner, better sound, especially on these nylon strings. But it doesn't really matter. Just whatever you get used to is fine. Experiment, I would say, is the key. So I've just played, just showed you just how to make that whoopy slide sound and get it clean. And you've got to have the fingers either side, keep it stable, keep parallel. You get the whoopy sound, and then once you feel like you can get a nice clean without too many rattles or too many buzzers, you'll get a few because of the nature of the instrument. It's not really designed for slides. So, in fact, a ukulele with a really high action and the strings right off the fretboard will give you a much better sound, because those rattles come from where the action's quite low, and if you put any sort of pressure at all and the string hits the slide and then rattles and then hits the fret at the same time and it rattles between them, it gives you that horrible rattly sound. Whereas a high action ukulele, so if you've got a cheap old ukulele and the action's quite high on it, that will be much better for slide playing, because it won't rattle against those frets so much, and you'll get a much cleaner sound. So that's, cheap old ukulele, if you've replaced it with a nice new one, would actually make a fantastic slide ukulele. So that's a little tip really. And this has got quite good action on it, so it's a little bit rattly, so I have to be very, very light with my touch. So looking at that riff, just doing that very simple riff, we're looking at, you can play all the strings, just looking at those 2 middle strings to start with, which basically is my A and D notes. It's a nice sound. And then what we're going to do is play that open, and then get the slide and aim for the 3rd fret, but go, what you're going to do is you're going to slide maybe around the 1st fret, and I'm aiming anywhere around here to get the whoop effect, the slide effect into that 3rd fret. And the idea, as you can see, is to get the sound right, is to get it very flat, very parallel, and a very light touch. So get that first. So that's how you get that very cool little blues effect, where you slide it into the note that you want, which is the 3rd fret, and then play it open. There you go. Okay, and that note there I'm aiming for is an F. So this is open D, D, D sharp, E, F. So I'm playing open D, and up to an F chord, and then open again. So if you get that, that's the first part of our cool blues riff. You hear this in things like Little Red Rooster and Bad to the Bone. So what I'll do is I'll slow it right down. You open, slide in from the 1st, then play open again, and then slide into the 5th. And I'll do this from the 3rd. So we're always going to be behind the note that I want to aim for to get that effect of the slide. So play open again, and then go 3 to 5. And then play open. So I'm going to open, slide into the 3rd, open, slide into the 5th. And then if I want to get an extra bit of slide effect, I go into the 5th, I drop it back, and then play it open. So as it's sliding back, I play it open. So open, slide in from the 1st to the 3rd, open, slide 3rd to 5th, let it come off, slide back ever so slightly, and then play that open note. And that's how we get this. And that's how you get that really cool blues slide of it. To the bone. So that's how you get that effect for the slide blues riff in open D. Now if I tune, I'm going to tune this differently, bear with me. So I'm going to take this back up to a G. This one's an A, so it's a little bit far away, so it goes up to a C. So I'm going to put it in your normal tuning now. So if you haven't tuned your ukulele down, you just watch that. We're going to do it in the slightly easier for the ukulele tuning of open C. So this is a D normally on the 2nd string. I'm going to tune that up to an E. I'm talking at the same time, it all goes out the window. So 1st string is already an A. Now you can play slide for single notes. So if you want to do that riff, say if you wanted to do that riff on any one note, so you could practice it. You could practice it playing it on one note in the normal tuning. But if you want an open slide effect that we just had in open D, then I would tune the 1st string to a G note, and now I've got, it's a substitute, you're putting your finger down there. We've now got an open C chord. So I can now play what I played before. Now it doesn't sound quite the same because of the note order that you've got. Here we've got a C and an E, which isn't quite the same effect, so we'd use all our notes this time, and that sounds a bit better. So rather than the 2 middle notes, if you're in open C, I'd use all of them. So you can get some really cool slide effects into the open C tuning, but as you can hear, it's slightly different. It's a bit higher in pitch as well. So I prefer it in D, but it still works in C. And if you've just got a slide, that's a lot easier, obviously, to start out with. So you can still play the same riff. You just play open, slide from 1st to 3rd, then play open, 3rd to 5th, open, and then you got that bluesy slide sound. Now you can also do a nice little effect if you want to add a little bit extra, like Little Red Rooster. There's a nice little high note he plays. Is on the 5th fret on the 1st string. So you just go to 5th, and what you see I'm doing, I'm aiming for the 5th by going from 3 to 5 on the 1st string, which is the A string, now tuned to G. And when I get there, I'm going to rock it from side to side, either side of that fret. And what you've got to listen out for, really, when you're playing it, is because it's a movable fret. Just because we're over the 5th fret doesn't mean it's in key. It might be slightly further up, closer to the fret, as opposed to back. So where you normally just put your finger anywhere there in between the two metal parts, this ever so slight difference of there, you hear as I'm moving ever so slightly back, can make the difference of it sounding slightly flat. These are all our microtones. These are our notes in between the natural sort of fretted notes, if you like, that we don't normally hear with the frets. So it's quite hard to get at first, to get it sounding really, really good and really accurate. Takes a bit of practice, but if I add that effect with the vibrato, which is basically going from side to side, it sounds pretty cool, that riff. So there you go. So that's and obviously we could play, so for C, F and G, for example, if we were playing a song and we wanted to add that effect, so here's our C. Now if I wanted to go to the F chord, so we've got our C, F and G, we're actually going to take it to the 5th fret this time. So the 5th fret is an F, C, there's our C. Now we go to G, which is on the 7th fret, F. So using that blues riff, if you like, as a little something to play over the C. And when I want to play the F, I can go into F on the 5th fret. C. Then the G. And there's a C. So you can see I'm going C, F and G, which is C open, F is on the 5th, G is on the 7th. It might be a lot to take in, but you can work on one thing at a time. So there you go. So you've got our open C tuning, which is the easiest way of tuning the instrument if you don't want to have a faff of tuning too many strings up and down. But if you have got a second ukulele, a cheap one, or one with a slightly higher action, tune it into D. Tune it into the D tuning, which is our F sharp, A, D and A, and that will give you a really cool blues-esque sound. And you'll be able to play that riff, and there's a couple other licks and things that you can throw in, you can learn later on using the scale and that, but I think that's a good starting point. Maybe I'll do a part 2 slide if people really like it and want more. There's a lot of really cool blues songs that have slide in it, but you can also get like quite a Hawaiian slide effect as well, like the laptop steel slides as well that you hear in country music, and just Hawaiian music you hear some slide instruments as well. So that'd be quite nice to add over the top. Try it out. Maybe I'll find a song for us to do that will utilise that tuning quite well, and that slide effect. So there you go. Hope you've enjoyed. Give it a whirl. Tune it to open C. Just remember that it's very, very little pressure, very light. Get the whoop sound, and when you're doing that, make sure that fingers are straight and parallel with the frets. That's the key. Light pressure. And yeah, let me know how you get on, and I'll speak to you soon. Over and out.